Watson, you're back. Mr. Stevens, are you back?
Watson's here.
Okay, well, it is 10:50. We are coming back out of our recent mid-morning recess. It is thank you and welcome back to San Juan County Council's Tuesday, July 14th, 2020 regular scheduled meeting. We are now going into a discussion/action to approve the acceptance of easements for the Fisherman Bay Road Shoulder Widening Complete Streets Project. Shannon, are you on the line?
I am here.
Hello, Shannon. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Nice to hear your voice. It's been too long.
It has been a long time.
Mr. Stevens, are you on the line?
I am on the line, and I took the people arrived while we were on break, so I don't need anything further.
Perfect. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure before we started that you were here since this is a Lopez-related issue. I was figuring you were working with those folks for a few minutes. All right, Shannon, please begin if you're ready.
Yes, good morning, council members. This is Shannon Wilbur, engineer with Public Works, here to talk to you about the resolution before you to accept easements for the next complete street project, which is the Fisherman Bay Road Shoulder Widening on Lopez Island. This resolution states that the County Council will accept easements that we are currently working on for the project and authorize the county manager to execute any of those documents as needed. Just as an aside, I also want to point out this is something that you have seen often in the past, most recently with Prune Alley, and I believe prior to that it was Haven. So this is a common resolution. And in the future, we may look to see if there's some way to do this in a more programmatic manner, so that you see it maybe once a year for the projects coming up rather than so often with each individual project. But that's in the future. Right now, we're talking about Fisherman Bay Road. The shoulder widening project is building a shared use trail along about half a mile of Fisherman Bay Road. In your packet is a newsletter that I put together and sent out to the adjacent property owners and posted on our website. It gives you some background on the project. We broke it into two phases. The first phase are two adjacent parcels that we did widen the shoulder. We didn't need any easements, and the telephone poles were not in the way. So that allowed us to move forward on that limited basis and then be able to show the property owners that I'm talking to what it will look like when it's all complete. Also working with CenturyLink, they are planning to remove their poles and underground their telephone line probably in about September, and Opalco will join in by adding a couple conduits for future lines. We expect to be able to complete the project this fall. We'll put a crushed surface gravel on the final product when we complete it this fall, similar to what we have on other trails in Lopez Village, and then chip seal it this spring. But the resolution before you will allow me to continue talking to the property owners about the necessary easements and follow through with that so we can proceed with the project. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
Mr. Stevens, do you have any questions?
No, it's where they have done it, it's great, and it's getting used, and it'll be great once this the thing is completed.
All right, thank you. Mr. Watson.
No real questions. I appreciate this. This is a great project, part of our overall, complete streets effort. So fully supportive, and absolutely, let's keep this thing moving forward.
All right, Mr. Thomas, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't. It's a great project. I usually end up or have to date executed a number of agreements for Orcas Road or Deer Harbor Bridge or other projects. So I'm familiar with the right-of-way discussion for these type of projects.
Great, thank you. And thank you for bringing this forward, Shannon. I would entertain a motion for approval at this point.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of a resolution accepting easements for the Fishman Bay Road shoulder widening project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve a resolution accepting easements for the Fisherman Bay shoulder widening project and allowing the county manager to accept. Is that all right if I add that part, Mr. Stevens?
Yeah.
Great. Any comments or questions? Seeing all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Shannon, thank you so much. In all sincerity, we miss seeing you and hope you and your family are safe.
All right, thank you. It was nice to be able to see you all for a change. And I'll be back with another project in the future. Bye-bye.
Bye, take care. The next item, we've had this sort of as a running item on our agendas, which is the COVID-19 budget impact. I think we discussed a lot of that next week, or last week, and we're going to have a quick rundown at the end of the day too on the CARES spending. So I don't have any more unless council does or anyone from staff does. We can just pass by this point. And I've asked Ingrid to take this off for future agendas. We've been getting these updates, I think, pretty regularly. Is that all right with council?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you. So as you're all aware, yesterday we were not able to go through all of the departmental budget requests. We have 3 that we carried forward from yesterday. Council, are you all right if we head forward on these last 3 department presentations?
Full speed ahead.
Alrighty, just wanted to make sure because we're sort of shifting gears here. So the first, we have 3 department budget finalizations or budget exercise presentations. The first one is Public Works, will be followed by the Sheriff, Jail, Dispatch, and then finally the Auditor, Elections, and General Government's budgets. I see Public Works is here. Kim Ott, are you on the line?
I am, and I'm just reaching out to the sheriff right now.
Okay, great. I would figure we have 5 or 10 minutes until you're up, but I just want to make sure you're aware that what point in the agenda we're in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Hottimer?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, Council. Ready to begin my presentation, assuming everyone can see my screen.
If you can, please begin.
Great. The goal was to get this thing done in 15 minutes and split my time with environmental resources who will follow me right afterwards. So the basis of this budget exercise is a 5% cut, which actually follows quite closely to what we're expecting to receive as a reduction in fuel taxes due to COVID-related impacts. So the reduction of fuel taxes amounting to probably about 5% for this year puts us in line with the rest of the other county departments who are doing a 5% cut based off sales taxes. 2020 revenue projections, just as a reminder, we are still fresh in our minds is the license fee $30 card tabs initiative from last year, which reduced about $660,000 of dedicated funding to the county roads. There's still some uncertainty in playing out in the courts about how that will ultimately be enacted, but at this time I have no reason to believe that the county will, at least San Juan County, will get any of that funding restored to us. So that $660,000 was something we anticipated in developing of this year's budget. So I'm just going to block it out there now because we took care of that earlier. So the things that are new is a reduction in fuel taxes based off of COVID. $135,000 in our direct distribution, And then 2/3 of our Capron refunds is also a fuel tax component. And so $285,000 out of there. So the cut right now we're looking to achieve is about $420,000. And again, that $420,000 represents about 5% of our total dedicated revenues of about $8.5 million.
Hey, Colin,
Yes.
I would just like to say that's the best example of sales math I've ever seen.
I'm unfamiliar with that inside joke, so I'm taking it as a compliment unless told otherwise.
Well, ask Mr. Stevens. It may or may not be, depending on the day. No, I just find it interesting that the cuts that we're receiving in the MVT, MVFT, and the Capron funds is exactly the 5% of your budget.
Yeah, right. Okay. Moving forward, so the first cut, staff reductions, and just a reminder again there in the top, we did a reorg in 2018 where we, through attrition, we retired out a crew chief on San Juan Island and also an operations manager, mid-level manager of the department. I'm just going to block that out again because it's very recent, but that's also not new. So this year, 2020, we were ahead of the county generally with our early retirement incentive. We had 2 people taking that, a crew chief on Lopez Island and of course my predecessor, the public works director. The combination of those saves the department about $290,000, and we did a small reorg with one of our staff that is now being shared with one of the clean water utility, stormwater utility. So that staff being split 50-50 saves the road fund another $50,000. And by not filling those early retirement incentives allows us to realize that $290,000 now and into the future when we have combined the county engineering director position as well. The second cut into our capital program, I was thankful to be able to brief council a few weeks ago on the TIP. And as Mr. Hughes noted, there's a number of red lines in the program, and that is a realization of a reduction in our capacity to develop scope schedules and secure fundings for those based off of a number of things, but including staff reductions. So there was a net reduction of 7 projects to the TIP. We added 1 project that was the PFAT-funded trail in Deer Harbor, and 2 projects which were completed, and that's a good thing, so Connector Road and Haven, but we dropped another 6 projects onto the 20-year plan, and council will have a chance to revisit this program in more detail in the coming weeks. We've delayed a few projects, primarily because of staffing resources, but Upper Deer Harbor Road, Enchanted Forest Road Sidewalk, and Pear Point Road Shoulder are still on the books. They're just have suffered from staffing delays. And we've also revised the scope on a few other projects, and I tried to emphasize that this is pretty, the impact is felt around the county in all 3 districts, but the separated trail on Baylor Hill Road, that's currently not a part of the project because of funding. Orcas Landing building and site amenities. There was a number of things that we were talking about doing with the building itself through the capital committee, but we are now focused on only the most essential elements of that project, including right now the next phase, which would be getting rid of the Jersey barrier and construction fence and completing the sidewalk up by the road. So a number of the more master planning capital improvements on Orcas Landing have been deferred. And then there's some smaller things like there's a trail project in Lopez Village that's on our capital program, but given the successes of Shannon and Jerry working together on Fisherman Bay Road, I am confident that we can tackle that one in a different light in-house through roadside maintenance activities instead of funneling it through the engineering office as a capital program. So again, scope revisions, and then taking a fresh look at how we deliver our projects to make sure we're doing it more efficiently. There's at least $100,000 in savings here. A lot of the information is very new, and budgeting for capital projects, especially during COVID, is hard to nail exactly how much money we're saving here, but I am confident that we have at least $100,000. So that $100,000 plus the $340,000 we've saved from staff reductions gets us to our cut in fuel taxes. Moving forward, so there are some level of service impacts. Our engineering docket, which is our placeholder for a number of things, road vacation, speed limits. There's quite a few county code updates that I have been wanting for a number of years to bring to council to improve the way we do business. Intra-department work, think about the stuff we do for parks and land bank. Those things suffer when we have staff reductions. Permit administration, we are down to the absolute minimum oversight on the permits that we see in this department. That's driveways, utilities, and land divisions. A lot of our driveways, especially our existing driveways, they really don't get eyes on the ground. A permit is applied for, reviewed administratively in the office, and they are given a property right to access a county road, but we really don't do inspection because of lack of staff. Only if there is a traffic safety issue that is brought to our attention afterwards do we have time to engage. And we'll see how that plans out. Sometimes road approaches to the county are done professionally, and it's not an issue, and at other times issues arise later and we have to come back. So we're monitoring that reduction in permit administration to see how problematic it becomes. And then the most concerning thing for me right now is the organizational depth and succession planning. When we have vacancies, whether they're planned or unplanned or medical leave, and right now with COVID, but everything becomes very disruptive, and we have no capacity to respond to emergent issues without dropping something. And that affects the organization from top to bottom. And I can speak to myself on a number of occasions where, let's just say my involvement recently on Prune Alley, when one of our staff engineers was out, I stepped in a little bit with Shannon on the flat project at Agate Beach, and then Mr. Watson, as you're aware, I fully intend to engage the port on trucks. But these are things that really challenge our organization. And when we're all healthy and we're all here, we pick at them, but one vacancy becomes very disruptive to us. And I just would like to end on a high note. We can, despite all this, I feel like the organization, the Public Works Department, continues to get better, and we are still getting things done. We've done a lot with our chip seal program. We still do process improvements. We're starting to realize the benefits of our financial unification into Eden. So the Public Works Department now is fully on board with the rest of the county. And then at the bottom, just, there's things to be proud of. Missing Mountain Road is open. We opened up a sidewalk in East Sound recently. And we're consolidating the resources we do have around a number of high priority big projects to make sure that those are successful and on track. The Operations Center in Beaverton Valley in District 1, of course Prune Alley on Orcas. We have the best of our engineering resources on that. And then the project management that we're delivering for Agate Beach to make sure that collaboration with the feds moves through smoothly. So I feel very good about delivering on the top priorities by consolidating our resources. And then of course, this is not just a one-time effort. What I'm sharing with you, we continue to monitor throughout the year, and I expect council will be briefed if the situation changes. So I believe we've met our 5% cut, and this is the proposal that I have for you. Of course, there's a budget worksheet that I have shared with you and Mylene, which shows which bars numbers these come in and out of, but unless you want to review that, this presentation covers the overview of what we're going for. The only other thing I have is an organizational chart if there's any questions about where we've lost staff, and this is where we are today.
Thank you, Colin. Mr. Stevens, you have any comments?
No, I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Mr. Watson?
Just wanted to thank Colin and all of his staff for the great work they're doing, and I appreciate this. No other questions.
Great. Thank you, Colin. Really good work, as always. Nothing for me as well. Mr. Thomas, do you have any comments or questions?
No, a good presentation from Colin. I'll just say that what you saw today was really the fruits of probably 3 years of discussion, and the goal was to make the best, most efficient organization, and of course it's timely with the budget crunch. But yeah, I just want council to know a lot of effort and a lot of discussions have gone into changing public works and revisiting a lot of the ways that we had done business, and just a lot of impressive thinking on staff's part. So I thank them for that effort.
Great. Thank you very much. And again, thank you, Colin. I assume Kendra is available to pass over the baton for the natural resource group. Hello, Kendra. Kendra?
Council, give me a minute. I'm going to see if I can track her down here. This is Colin.
All right. Well, we'll pause for a minute here. Colin,
Probably wasn't they're expecting it, Rick, since I think yesterday we told her it'd be around 2.
Fair enough. Well, why don't we go? Kim, are you available?
I'm here, but the sheriff is actually on the line now, so I think he'll be presenting.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello, Sheriff. Do you guys mind?
No, that's fine.
And then, Colin, if you're paying attention, please tell Kendra I apologize for the wrong time yesterday, and we're going to go with the sheriff, and we'll get to her maybe in 30 minutes or so.
Understood. Stand by.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so let me try to figure out how to do this as well. Okay. All right, you guys see my presentation?
Yes, Sheriff.
Okay. Excellent. All right, thank you. So this is my presentation, obviously, for our budget reduction. We've been asked to provide 5% of our budget, which comes out to $272,831, roughly, of our operational budget. Where are we making the cuts? To come up with 5% this year, we have the courthouse security position, which has not been filled and will not be for at least the remainder of the 2020 year. We've transferred funds from our jail budget to juvenile court services so that they would not have to come back to the council to ask for more funds for their budget. We have monies that were not spent due to unfilled positions in the sheriff's office, and we're also exiting the Northwest Learn, which is the Northwest Law Enforcement Radio Network, and I'll get into those here in a second. At this time, the courthouse security position, we haven't filled it. The coronavirus epidemic hit early in the year, just before we were about to fill it, and as such, the courthouse is pretty much shut down. So we didn't fill it, and we don't have plans to filling it currently. That'll save roughly $100,000 for the year with wages, benefits, and equipment. We're also not purchasing the security lockers for the courthouse at this time, which comes to roughly $13,000 out of the budget. So that'll save $113,117 to our 2020 budget. Juvenile court services, earlier this year, they had a shortfall in their budget due to a couple of juveniles for their in custody. We transferred $20,000 out of our jail budget. Because of the coronavirus, it has actually dropped our jail numbers down a bit. So we had the room in our budget. We transferred to them so that they, again, wouldn't have to come back and ask for more money from you. So we're counting that as a budget reduction on our end. The unfilled positions in the sheriff's office, we currently have 2 dispatch positions that have not been filled. We had one of them filled briefly for about 2-week period. The gal that we hired, she was from Central Oregon, had a job opportunity back in Oregon that she wanted to take, so she left suddenly. So that's left us with 2 unfilled dispatch positions for the better part of this year. And then we have the 1 Lopez deputy position that was filled, but because of the coronavirus, it shut the academy down and had to put him on hold. So he's been hired, but we haven't paid him all year. We have an academy date of August 4th, which left half the year of wages unspent. So it's a total budget savings of $130,000 between the 2 dispatch positions and that deputy position. That was in our budget that has not been paid. The Northwest Law Enforcement Radio Network, this is something that we joined, I don't know, 25 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. It was long before me. It was established basically to help all the law enforcement agencies in the 4 counties here in the Northwest, Skagit County, Whatcom County, Island, and San Juan counties get together, do buying power to put radio system put together and maintain our radio system. But due to changing technologies, different brands, everybody's kind of gone their separate ways. It's been managed by the Whatcom County DEM for the last 20 plus years. They're kind of the financial director of this system, and we pay in every year to them. We are not going to be a part of that network anymore. It's something I've questioned for the last couple of years. I don't know why we're in it. It costs a lot of money to go to meetings, to hold the meetings. We pay money to them every year. And then with the new CODAN system that we're going to be going with, it will pretty much render the Northwest Learn irrelevant for us. So we're going to exit that. For the last 20 plus years, we've been paying into it. So we actually now have a budget surplus, or have a surplus of, it's 41,000 and some change. After backing out the maintenance fees and everything this year, we're going to have roughly $35,000 that's just going to come back to the county because it's not being spent. Why that money was put in there year after year after year, I'm not sure. But we're not going to need to do that anymore. And then from here on out, it's going to save us anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a year, depending. And so our total budget savings, we're going to save basically $55,000 from dispatch, $130,000 from the jail, and also not filling that courthouse security position, $75,000 from the sheriff's budget, and then with the unexpected revenue from Northwest Learn of $35,000, that puts our total budget savings this year at $296,000, which is just over the 5%. That we're asked to cut. Our organizational chart, as you can see, our organizational chart, we run actually pretty thin. It's myself, my undersheriff, and chief civil deputy, and then we have 2 corrections officers, we have 2 detectives, we have a sergeant on each of the islands, and 6 deputies on San Juan, 5 deputies on Orcas, and 3 deputies on Lopez. We have a dispatch supervisor and 9 dispatchers, which makes it 10 dispatchers in dispatch, allows 24-hour coverage when we're fully staffed. So far, business so far. With the coronavirus, I really anticipated us slowing way down like everybody else, but that didn't really appear to happen. Through July 1st, our call volume is actually up 1.3%. And that's not taking into account all the coronavirus calls, the hotline calls, the emails that we've gotten asking us to investigate the properties and the different people who are suspected or who are reported to have been violating the governor's stay-at-home order. We don't count any of those. If we counted them, it was because a deputy was sent out to investigate something, or they got a call report from someone and they actually went out and investigated it. Like I said, while the economy shut down, the sheriff's office really hadn't. Industry-wide, everybody is expecting a push as soon as the kids go back to school. We're not seeing CPS referrals like we normally would because nobody's in school. And once the kids go back to school, we anticipate a big spike in those calls. Abuse calls, child crime calls. Our mental health calls are actually up 44% year to date. And our calls for service, total calls for service, were up 65 calls over last year. Last year we did just over 10,000 calls for service, which was the first time we ever did that. And we're on pace to do that. Nationwide, I know we haven't discussed this here, and I don't want you guys to think that this is where I'm going with this. I know you haven't talked about defunding the police. I just want to make the point that, we have a great relationship with our communities. We work really hard to keep it that way. We work really hard to build the trust and respect with our communities. And while what happens on the mainland doesn't necessarily happen here, it eventually reaches us. And the worse that it gets on the mainland with the rhetoric and the crime, and I think we had 4 shootings over the weekend, people are going to start to come this way. Speaking with a real estate agent who I asked him how their business was, and they said, well, their business is up because people from the mainland are coming up wanting to buy up in the county up here where it's quieter. So as the county grows, or as more and more people come here, we also get busier, unfortunately. We currently, as I said, work with a very thin staffing model as it is. We don't have 24-hour coverage. We, at times, have to call deputies out from home to cover either a backup or to go respond to a call. We have just enough people now to do that. Could I use another position? Sure. But could I lose a position? Would make it very difficult. If our staffing model now that we use allows us to interact with the community, allows us to maintain that trust and that respect, which I believe is why we don't have the same problems that you see on the mainland, why our local community loves the sheriff's office, whereas on the mainland you see a lot of people that hate the police. We don't have that problem here, and we'll continue to work and prevent that. So in conclusion, this is our 5% cut. And I'll take any questions.
Mr. Stevens.
I don't think I have any questions. I was glad on the statistics because that was one of my questions I was going to ask Ron is about the mental health or domestic disputes calls, imagining that they would probably be up during this period.
Yeah, our domestic violence calls, we thought for sure those were going to skyrocket as well. And those didn't really jump as much as I thought they would. We're actually down a little bit in our domestic violence calls. But Safe San Juan's, their calls of service or their, I forget exactly how they list it, but they're up. So I anticipate that's going to catch up to it as well. One of the things that we have seen is all the bars closed. And that dropped a lot of our DUIs down, but the bars have now reopened. In the last month, we've had 17 DUIs. So the guys are out there, they're getting the drunks off the road before they wreck their car or they injure or kill someone. And we figured that would happen when the bars reopen. People are going to go back and it's going to be back to business as usual. I fully expect that with Safe San Juan's numbers up, that at some point those will start coming to us as well. So,
Thank you.
But, yeah.
Mr. Watson?
Yeah, Sheriff Krebs, thanks for the presentation. Curious how we're doing on drug enforcement since we have a new drug deputy.
Yeah, the canine's keeping the prosecutor's office very busy. I bet it's a couple times a month I come into work and there's a car in the bullpen that Susha has hit on and Rodney and Jay have dealt with. So she's definitely keeping us busy. She was actually just spayed here a week and a half ago or so. So she's out of commission for the time being, but she'll be back soon.
I would encourage you to work with Mr. Thomas, and maybe we could issue a press release about the improvements that she has provided.
Sure. Yep.
So I think that would be good press relations.
Absolutely. And I also would still love, once the council gets back together and business is back to normal, I'd love to bring her in and bring her before the council. So.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
But otherwise, no questions.
Okay.
That would be great. I'd love to meet Susha.
Yeah.
Sheriff, thank you. Sheriff, real quick, could you give me the numbers again for the deputies on, you said, how many deputies on San Juan? 9?
It is, no, it's, we have a sergeant, 6 deputies, and 2 detectives. So yes, 9, if you count the detectives.
And then you said 6 on Orcas?
Yes. 5 on Orcas, a sergeant, and 5 deputies.
And then 3 on Lopez.
Yep, a sergeant and 3 deputies on Lopez.
Great. And could we get a copy of your presentation?
Sent it to Ingrid yesterday.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mike, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Ron and Kim, for putting this together.
Thank you.
And Sheriff, thank you very much for exceeding the requested amount in the 5%. Be interesting to see how that plays out for your numbers for 2021, because that will be an issue for us as well. But I'm very glad for the reductions that you brought forward. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I didn't do 2021 because 2021 is a tough year to predict. I don't know what the number that you guys will be asking for will be. 80% of our budget is in staffing, and really any cuts, with the exception of I can drop out, a couple of patrol cars, which will save around $100,000. To go anywhere beyond that, we're looking at cutting positions and cutting bodies, and that becomes a much different conversation. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Kendra, are you?
I am here.
I apologize for the 2 o'clock prediction. But thank you for, do you have time now, or do we need to come back to you?
No, I have time now. Yep. I was on a conference call, so I wasn't listening in. So,
Great.
Let me try to present my desktop here. Full screen. Are you able to see the desktop?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
So, Kendra, you have 7.5 minutes. Colin used his 7.5 minutes.
Okay. Oops, my screen just started churning. Okay. Hopefully I can
Kendra, he's
run on.
How much time did you need?
Okay. Well, I'll go as quickly as I can. For the record, Kendra Smith, Environmental Resources Manager. So just as a quick reminder, we're the Environmental Resources Division is here to preserve the freshwater resources, protect the marine environment, and coordinate recycling and solid waste throughout the county. in partnership with others. You know, our kind of cornerstone business is, you know, environmental preservation, but integrating that with community values and economic vitality. To start out, as far as, so we've got the three main programs, the clean water utility, the marine program, and solid waste. I'm just going to run through the key changes that we have proposed in our budget. So for the clean water utility, on the operating revenue, we obviously have a restricted utility fund with a stable fee assessment and sufficient cash on hand, roughly $1 million. We receive about $207,000 from the roads assessment for their impervious cover. And this year we're proposing that for 2021, we propose we split that between capital and operating, because we're allowed to apply that money wherever we like, and I can explain that a little bit further down the road here. As far as operating expenditures in the budget, we have picked up the GIS engineering tech 4. That's Terry Clark from the roads department. We'll be eliminating the public works director expenses from the utility. We've also reduced professional services, travel and training. And I am also proposing moving the project manager position solely into the operating budget. Right now I have it split between operating and capital. And I think that's adding to some complexity in the budgeting process that I want to eliminate. On the capital side of the clean water utility, of course, there's two funds in the clean water utility. On the capital, it's also a restricted fund with stable assessments. This fund is actually segregated by island, so it requires it to be balanced by each island. We have about $500,000 to $700,000 cash on hand in this fund year over year, and we are going to make that adjustment on the roads assessment here on this fund on the revenue side for 2021. On capital expenditures, these are adjusted based on need and progress. We've reduced the overall capital improvement plan by about $176,000 from the previous version that you saw. I believe it was back in February when I presented that. And that was due in February because we removed and replaced 3 projects on Orcus to address the 2 culverts where we had a failure during the floods in February, and then 1 project to address flow restoration in Cascade Creek. And so just quickly, here's the current capital improvement program, and we're at $4.2 million with $1.8 million in grants as part of this program. Okay, I'm going to stop there before moving on to marine. Are there any questions, or do you want me to just take those all at the end?
Let's take them at the end.
Okay. So the marine program, as you know, is grant funded both in program staffing and in projects. We currently receive on average $40,000 from the levee lid lift funds. And you just recently approved $40,000 in county current for salmon recovery grant match in 2020. As part of that grant match, as I laid out, we were also anticipating another $600,000 in additional match for 2021 to go along with the project. But as we saw COVID And as we were finishing our grant applications and things, we slid projects around because we had anticipated that there was going to be problems with being able to meet match. So right now we have a proposal in for only $24,000 in match to keep us afloat with those project match requirements for the grants that we are in pursuit. I can explain that a little bit further down the line here. We also provide $30,000 to $40,000 a year in indirect to the general fund off the various grants that we have. And then the other item, we're reapplying for awarded REAP money that was split over multiple years to try to address Orcas Landing and finish that project. And then we have an expected increase in the LIO grant revenue, but that gets worked out in September, so we're going to have to do a revisit on this budget. So for expenditure cuts, we reduced for the salmon recovery. We're proposing to reduce what you provided us in the $40,000. We reduced that by 10% for 2020 to meet the target. And for the southern resident killer whale, that's the other $40K that comes in from the levy lift money. We're proposing $8,490 in reduction, which is just over 10% over the 2 years, with the cuts coming for 2021 as opposed to 2020, but still an overall cut per the requirement. And I would just like to mention we still have a fair amount of unfunded direct admin and office expenses for this marine program that really they're not accounted for right now. We kind of deal with it through the utilities, but there's still some lingering issues around how to pay for kind of direct costs associated with office and admin for this program. And I'll show you here, this is the nearshore habitat capital improvement plan. So this includes a bunch of the marine related projects and the nearshore salmon recovery projects. You'll see we're at a proposed out to 2026 of 3.5 million. You'll see down here at the bottom, we have indicated here was the 40 that was approved. This has actually been adjusted a little bit. This should actually be 24 because some of the money we're requesting is to address the agate beach stairs, which we're seeking funding through another source. So just to clarify, this is a summary of those reductions. So for SRKW, we're looking at this number here, and I will have to say, and kudos to Frances Robertson, she has been beating every bush out there to try to find additional local or private grants to help fund this program. She's submitted to Pew. We're looking at NIFWIF, and we're another private foundation to try to keep the effort going with the Whale Wise and the whale program. So we're hoping that we might see some more grants come in to fill in the hole. And then on the salmon recovery, you can see the 4,000 cut I mentioned here. And this is what we expected to request for 2021. This is what we've managed to reduce it down to in terms of being able to meet the match for those local grants. So some key things about environmental grants dilemma. In terms of cutting the actual grants, I haven't proposed cutting the existing grants because then we don't get the indirect, and the money's already coming in. It's already been approved. So we left those alone. But the programmatic grants are not going to be allowed to be matched against other project-related grants. So that's a limitation. So we do need local dedicated match resources to be able to draw in these larger grant revenues. So as an example, for the salmon recovery that you supported, we're anticipating, and the team has embraced the TAG and the Marine Resources Committee, and the final voting will happen next month. But it looks like we would be potentially receiving $682,000 to the Marine program, and a total of $1.6 million in salmon recovery dollars coming to the county and county programs. And this was made possible by the investment that you made in supporting the required match. Okay, last utility. The
So
solid.
Kendra,
Yep.
just backing up that point. So, just want to be clear. So, a match was provided. Are you saying you still need a match? I'm missing something.
So we received just the 2020 year's match. So that's this $40,000. And if you go back and take a look at the memo, we estimated that we needed, gosh, I think it was around $135,000 total based on that scenario. But we only addressed the 2020 in February, and I indicated that I'd be coming back for the 2021, 2022, and 2023. And then what we did is we shifted, as we saw things kind of taking a beating, we shifted out and changed some of the projects and went after other match sources as best we could to kind of keep it together. But we're still needing roughly $24,000 to be able to continue to move these projects forward. Most of them are scheduled to go to construction, you can see here, in 2022 and 2023. So 2022 is a real big build year for a lot of things. So.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so on the solid waste utility, we have, again, utility restricted fund with state taxes and operating license. The grants average about 20% of the revenue, and we also have sufficient cash on $700,000 to $800,000. As far as expenditures, we've eliminated the public works director for 2021. We reduced some professional services printing. We picked up the Lopez Firehouse office for the 9 months of this year we'll take over that space. Originally it was a split space with DCD. But that leaves a hole in replacing the Spring Street office payment, which I'm not really going to deal with in this year, but I will need to deal with it for next year. So it's hard to justify paying $12,000 in office space under the utility. So that's the issue. I'm paying for it one place or another. I've also reduced some of the capital allocations in the operating at some of the operation sites for 20 and 21 to help meet the 5% mark. But I am proposing that we look at adding in a transfer to parks of $12,000 this year and $20,000 next year for garbage collection at parks in an effort to help save county current funds. So that's within the bounds of the utility. We already do that for the village, so I think we'll be able to justify that. So we've started up doing similar to the clean water and the nearshore program. We've started a solid waste CIP, and we're working with the various partners in solid waste to establish a program of what they would like to do and what improvements need to be made for safety and the like, and using that to guide our investments. So these are the total overall costs that we've received from the various partners so far, with the county paying a small portion of that. Originally, we're recommending $50,000 a year of investment. Now we've reduced that to $43,000. Okay, the last couple of slides here are just a staffing summary. You can see where our staff are allocated to. We have some in clean water, some in solid waste, and the marine program. And then we have, we support our 4 admin staff. The utilities and the marine program are very contract and funding and admin intensive programs. We push a lot of money through in a lot of different funds. So this work is very important to our sustaining situation. So our total is 9.3. The actual program staff up here is 7.3. And then on the capital summary, Jamie had asked a question about this. And so you can just see the totals here. This is what we've allocated in the budget. If you look at the CIP sheet, you'll see it's slightly different, and that's primarily due to the staffing capitalization that we track in the budget, but not list in the CIP. Same thing for solid waste. This key difference between what's in the budget and what's in the CIP is that the partner allocations are included in the CIP. And then down in the marine program, we have capital planning and capital construction. And so this is what you'll see in the and then in the CIP, slightly different numbers, primarily because in the budget, I've got the PFAS grant in there, which is not for Orcas Landing, which is not included in the regular marine program budgeting. So that just gives you an idea of what 2020 and 2021 hold for us. I did put this added note in the marine program in 2022. Pretty high number, and then it drops back down in 2023. So that's what those two numbers are. Table's a little bit confusing, I apologize. And that's it. So with that, happily take questions.
Mr. Stevens?
I didn't have any questions, but I do appreciate the creativity of eliminating some of the current expense drain through parks by moving some of the solid waste money over there.
Great, thank you, Mr. Watson.
Yeah, Kendra, thank you. No questions at this point.
And thank you, Mr. Watson. So Kendra, I just want to confirm. So you're saying your net budget reduction would be $56,090. Is that correct?
I haven't done that summary. Let's go back. So are you referring solely to the marine program?
I just need to know from your department, what is the net either gain or reduction in CE? Okay,
so the only CE is the slide that you see here.
Correct.
And so right now the net reduction is the 8490 plus the 4,000, but you need to take a look at the 2021, that's why it's an italicized here. We were going to ask for 67. We're now asking for 24. So you can't total that up to 56 because this is not money we've, been assigned yet. But we are needing it for the match for salmon recovery. So it turns out that we don't, our total need still remains roughly $19,000. So we actually don't have a full-on cut.
Right, but the 67,600, was that's in the original budget, correct?
It was not. We had it approved by you in February, and we just did the 2020, and we indicated that we would come back and take care of the 21, through the budget process. And then COVID hit and everything kind of melted.
But 67 is a 2021 number, so it doesn't count for 2020 anyway. So 2020 is 13,490.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm sorry. No, because the 8490 is also 2021.
The reduction for 2020 is $4,000.
Exactly.
Right.
Out of the whole department.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I echo Mr. Stevens' comments on being creative on how to help other departments with their CE budgets. So our last budgeting departmental discussion revision is the auditor with representing elections and the auditor's office, and then I would assume general government budgets as well. Hello, Mylene.
Hello. I'm getting a message that I'm having trouble sharing, and let me see if this will. Okay, are you seeing my presentation?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, good. So I will also go back here and share my face. Okay, so yes, I'm talking about auditor and elections, which are two separate departments, but both are under the auditor. This is an org chart which Tara put together recently. I'm laughing because I actually extended that line over to elections because in many ways they're very separate from the rest of us. We certainly count them as part of our family, but they're in a different building and have very distinct responsibilities from the rest of the department. So in our real org chart, they're not so far away. The elections department reports directly to me, and the rest of the staff reports to the chief deputy auditor, and through that to me. So let's talk about the responsibilities of the office, and this should all be familiar to you. But on the finance side, and I've kind of broken this into finance and accounting. In addition to putting together the budget, the department does financial reporting. The annual report is where those quarterly budget reports and various other reports throughout the year, grants administration, and financial system management. On the accounting side, we're responsible for the general ledger, accounts payable, payroll, fixed assets, and I include under that surplus personal property management. And we provide some services to other districts and some services to other departments, such as ordering supplies and keeping ferry tickets available. Our customer service staff, which we commonly refer to as recording and licensing, does vehicle and vessel licensing, in addition to marriage and dog licenses. The marriage and dog licenses actually go through the recording system, so while you may think of them as licensing, they're actually more recording. Recorded documents, which is all kinds of land documents as well as other documents that people want to record to make a public record of. This department, this part of our group is also the people who usually receive claims and lawsuits against the county just because the auditor has been appointed as the claims agent. And so since they have an open counter, they accept those documents. Finally, on our election side, in addition to voter registration and election administration, we do outreach and petition validation. Often the petitions have to do with elections, but sometimes we validate petitions that have nothing to do with elections just because we have the tools. We don't typically do a lot of outreach in this county, partially because we have a very involved electorate and typically have a very high turnout for elections. Fortunately, using CARES money and some other voter education grant, we've been doing some outreach this year, have already had one mailer and we'll have another one in a month or so. So the way our budget is evolved for 2020 has been a lot by default. We have had since January, well, at one point we had 3 vacancies in the office, which was very close to debilitating. But over the last few months, we have we've used these opportunities to do rebuilding, and I really feel right now like we have a dream team in the financial area. We use that term a lot in my office. Got a great new chief deputy who joined us in, I don't remember, the year is a blur. She joined us shortly before the world fell apart, and then we hired a fabulous new GL accountant who joined us in the middle of the world falling apart. The grants manager was promoted to budget analyst, and the accounts payable deputy to grants administrator. We replaced that position with a lower level position, and have just started a new payables deputy who, again, I think is going to be just fabulous. So we're in a very good place to move forward. But the fact is we had so many vacancies, and because of hiring at lower steps, that saved substantial amounts of our 2020 budget and is the basis for my easily achieving the 5%. I think it's more like 7.5% reduction in our 2020 budget. In addition, most trainings and travel and conferences were canceled this year, so we saved a lot of money that way. I will say, however, we also had to increase some costs. Advertising was high because of all the vacancies. Postage has been high because we are doing more business by mail, particularly in the licensing area, also a little bit in finance and, in finance. And we've also had substantial overtime because of the vacancies. But other than, we've saved enough money to cover all of those costs. So yeah, we're looking at a 7.22% decrease in 2020, excluding the IT charges, which everybody was supposed to exclude, and a 5% decrease in 2021. Now, 2021, we're not anticipating those vacancies. Goodness, I hope not. And while some of our people were replaced at lower levels, 2021 is definitely more of a challenge. We had to continue some of the travel and training reductions. My expectation is there still will not be much travel, and probably the people who provide training will begin to charge for the online training because they can't continue to provide it without cost. But we're having to, nibble around the edges. So I have to say that the reductions in 2021 are definitely squeezing, not cutting. They are achievable. Whether they'd be achievable for more than a year is a good question. In elections, I should explain that we have an elections equipment reserve, which is funded by a 15% overhead charge on all of the billing that elections does to other districts for running their elections. We total the costs, we add 15%, and that 15% goes to our elections equipment reserves, which we maintain in the capital improvement fund. Those reserves have allowed us to buy our new tabulation system, which we're paying over a 5-year period. and other needed equipment. In addition, in 2019 and 20, we've received substantial grants, which is kind of unusual for elections, but that funding has been available. We received a voter education grant, and in this year, CARES and HAVA grants. The HAVA is for security upgrades. So much money in those that honestly we won't be spending it all. We'll be returning what we don't spend. But those funds are enabling us to pick up some of the expenditures that we would use the elections equipment reserve for. So the 2020 budget reduction plan is to forego the transfer of funds for the primary in general, and which is about $23,500, I believe. So leave those in the current expense fund because we have other funds that are replacing what we would use them for. However, I have to note that elections costs are going up through no fault of our own. Legislative changes, they keep making elections more difficult to run, more requirements that are requiring more staffing. Some vendor changes are also increasing the cost. We can no longer print all of our envelopes at once. They'll only print one election at a time, and that increases our costs. Heightened security, because that's a big deal in the elections world these days, is also creating the need to replace some equipment and install some additional measures. So while we have enough savings from not transferring the overhead in 2020, again, 2021 will be a challenge. Elections typically has a variable budget in that a year like this year, this is a presidential year. This is as expensive as it gets. Next year, as an odd year, will be much better. What I'm looking forward to is 2022, when a new law will kick into place. And I'm knocking on wood right now because we're hoping that this current budget crisis doesn't cause the legislature to reconsider. The auditors have been working for years on legislation to have the state pick up its share of even year elections. And they finally passed that bill this year. So in 2022, when that goes into effect, we'll be getting a lot more assistance in elections from the state. So short term, I would say, in summary, I would say that our 2020 reductions are solid, believable, and very achievable, but they are short term. In 21, we are talking about squeezing, not cutting. Manageable for a year, but not more. In 2022, elections, I think, will be bailed out by the state picking up its share of elections. So I hope that things begin to return to more normal in 2022. Questions?
So, Marlene, what is your total reduction?
I don't know. I could look it up.
Okay. That would be nice to know. I think we were all trying to get the number that was.
Well, but the number that you're adding together, Rick, includes some things that aren't really reductions. So I think the more meaningful number is to look at the difference between ending cash before we made these changes and ending cash after we made the changes. And I believe that total for the current expense is about $800,000.
Right, Marlene, I'm just asking what your department will be contributing or is offering up at the 5% or 7%. All I'm asking for.
I can look that up.
Excellent, thank you. Are you going to talk about any of the other?
Yes, I am. Right now, I'm looking up the dollar amount of our reductions.
So, Marlene, can I ask you, when you say that 800,000, is that what is that?
When I gave you the overview, I showed you the difference between ending cash before we made these COVID adjustments, I'll call them, and after. And it went from, as I recall, about 1.8 million to about 2.6 million. That's an $800,000 difference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What was the $1 million that you told us yesterday? How does that play?
The $1 million was the target. We did not fully achieve it, but did pretty well. But that, again, assumes that you accept all of the offered changes. Here I'm getting to, okay, so the dollar savings are about $80,000 and for the auditor and about $16,500 for elections.
Okay, so can you, and I guess I'm being dense here. So if you said we had a target of $1 million yesterday,
right?
What is the $800,000 that you're referencing today?
That is
Reality.
What we achieved of the $1 million target.
So you're saying that of the $1 million, what was presented to all of us yesterday, only $800,000 is relevant?
That is correct.
Including all the additions that the sheriff's office brought forward today?
That is correct. I can give you some examples of why the numbers that you're not adding are, why they're not completely relevant, if you want them. Okay, I would like to talk a little bit about some of the other funds, and I'm going to switch. Are you seeing that presentation now?
Yes.
Okay, this will be pretty quick because most of them are not terribly relevant to current expense, but I just want to go through them. First of all, general revenue. I already talked about the revenue assumptions in the overview, so you know what assumptions we're making as far as our property tax and sales tax. In general administration, which includes a wide variety of services of a general nature, and Mike mentioned this during his presentation, this department is sort of co-managed by administration and the auditor's office. It includes the Charter Review Commission, which happens only every 10 years or so, and will be happening next year. We did not foresee that and are adding $7,000 to next year's budget for to support that commission. Hearings examiner, which Mike may want to talk more about, but he has said those costs may be increasing. State audit. One of the things that Rick had mentioned when he proposed some reductions was the state audit. Although we have no control, zero control over what they charge us, I am including a $50,000 reduction in their costs for 2020, simply because I believe that their audit will be completely remote this year. They actually do have 3 weeks scheduled on site, but given the way things are going in the state, I don't think it's going to happen on site. My hope is that if we find this year that a remote audit works well, in the future we will also be able to reduce our travel costs for that.
Good.
Public defense, those costs may also be increasing. And again, Mike, if you want to say anything about that,
yeah,
you're welcome to.
I think, well, jumping back to the hearing examiner, you know, it really depends on the workload through DCD. So it's just tied to that workload, and also we use the hearing examiner for almost everything that we do, which is a different conversation. On the public defense cost, staff's goal is to keep that cost flat. So I'm going to step away a little bit from the maybe increasing comment, but just let council know that we're doing everything to maintain the current funding level that we have right now.
Okay, and we've got a few central employee programs, not terribly expensive. They're just managed out of this department because it's central. This is where you see all the shared copiers, faxes, and postage machines paid for. A cost is trending up over time, but we're trying to hold the cost. Insurance payments for the current expense department, liability and property, come out of this fund. IOSA and transfers to reserve funds are also budgeted in this department. This year, I am also stuck a big number, $200,000 for estimated furlough savings here. We may, further along the process, actually distribute that to the departments, but at this point, we're just using a gross estimate, and it is stuck in this department. So the furlough reduction and the non-transfers to budget stabilization are not counting toward this department's 5% goal. And even though this is a general department, I still try to achieve a 5% goal in both 20 and 21 for it. So for 20, as I mentioned, reducing the state audit cost by $50,000. And the other proposal is to reduce the transfer to capital reserves, which is always $100,000, by $50,000. While I'm not crazy about reducing our reserving, this is a year when I think that makes sense. Then for 2021, I can't really count on the state audit reduction again, but we can do the capital reserve reduction again. I also had to add $7,000 for the Charter Review Commission, and I'm adding $10,000 for unemployment because I think we're going to see more unemployment claims next year. In order to get the rest of the way, I reduced the IOSA support by $50,000. It sounds like they are getting good corporate support. Their campaign, their fundraising is going well, so I hope that will be workable. And an idea which honestly I haven't had time to talk to Mike about, but I'm considering a proposal to reduce the transfer to insurance reserve by half. Now that would affect all departments and funds that have employees because they all contribute to the insurance reserve. We are currently transferring $100,000 a year. Last year we had a very good year, and by good year I mean few claims or settlements paid out of the fund. If that happens again this year, I think it would be practical to reduce the transfer for next year to $50,000. For current expense, that's about a $31,000 savings. So those are the proposals for that department. And I can look up the totals. Well, it's $100,000 a year.
That's good. I kept track this time. So,
Okay.
So the $800,000 that you said that we've achieved, does that include this money you just provided?
Yes. It includes all changes that were submitted to me throughout the organization. See, my budget summary incorporates all changes proposed by the departments. And I've been keeping notes about a few that I didn't catch. Or, for example, Kendra was just talking about the $4,000 reduction to current expense. Although I had recorded that, and that fund, the grants fund, that was one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning. There's going to be some things I didn't catch in the other fund. I did not catch that in current expense, so I was able to add $4,000 savings to current expense in 2020. Of course, she's asking for more money, but that has yet to be approved. Okay, I'm going to go on to operating transfers. This is where those natural resource grant support payments are made of, as well as transfers to parks, emergency management, and victim services. So any changes in those funds transfer to current expense here. We did have to add a $200,000 transfer to parks in order to balance that budget. That is included in the, well, it was included before this reduction. And again, I have to check when this is all done to make sure that operating transfers have captured all of the changes in other funds.
Mylene, where's the, like, for the 200,000 parks, where did that come from?
It's coming from current expense. Basically,
Okay,
in
thank
order,
you.
with the parks budget, the way it is $200,000 short of being balanced, and the only place you can take that from is current expense. But it's been in there, but it was in the previous, it's not in the adopted budget, but it was in my model before.
And that's as a result of reduced revenue, though, right?
That is reduced revenue, yes. Remember, we're looking at, our current expectation is that revenue will be at 50% of budgeted. So now we're out of current expense and looking at other funds. You know about the changes to budget stabilization, canceled the transfers into budget stabilization from current expense of $300,000 in 2020 and 305 in 2021. These changes were already included, and added a transfer out of $411,000 into current expense, and then also reduced interest earnings because there'll be less money in the fund. The effect on the fund is to reduce the fund, the budgeted ending cash at the end of 2021 from $2.7 million to $1.7 million. So that's the effect of the changes. I would note there is currently no transfer from budget stabilization to current expense in 2021, and we may eventually get there. Okay, the next fund is the Insurance Cumulative Reserve Fund. Again, I already mentioned a proposal to reduce the transfer to $50,000 in 2021, which would save current expense $31,000 and would save some money for all the other funds as well. Veterans Assistance. One change I'll note here is that this fund was not supposed to have an earmarked levy in 2020 because of miscommunication. That levy is happening, which is fine. The money will stay in the fund because it's restricted funds. We'll skip the levy in 2021 instead. I did not change the budget because all of the funds in this fund are available for use. Just because you may be curious, I have been keeping in tabs with the Veterans Advisory Board and attending the meetings, and they have not seen a marked increase in claims because of the current recession. It's just something I'm watching to see if that's going to be an issue. But they're well within their expected spending at this time. Dog license, no change there because expenditures are based on what comes in. We cover our few expenses and then the rest goes to the shelters. If there's less revenue, then there's less spending because less distributions to the shelters. So no reductions necessary. Emergency communications, this is our first year of operation, of course, so there's nothing to compare it to. We amended it in the first budget amendment to add the expected proceeds of a bond and to add bond payments. And the next amendment, I'm actually shifting those payments from direct payments to the lender to instead we're going to make it as transfers to the bond redemption fund. Because of accounting rules in the state, we have to make loan payments out of the bond redemption fund. So it's just straighten out some accounting, blah, blah, blah. Lodging tax. Okay, our current prediction is 50% of 2019. We'll be watching the numbers to see if that seems realistic, but that's our feeling at this time. Expenditures will have to be realigned. I know that some of the 2020 awards have been, the board has already, committee has already agreed to move those to 2021. I still need to work on this fund. I need to get straightened out what's going where. The funds available for awarding this year for use next year will be about half the budgeted amount based on the fact that revenue is expected to be half of what we had originally said. So again, this fund is going to take some more work.
You think it's going to be half?
That is my current
optimistic.
Well, and I struggle. You know, I told you I reduced camping to 40%, but they got started later. I don't know. This is something I'd be curious. I would love to get the LTAC's opinion on, Jamie, and I will have some questions for you when I try to sort out the expectations for this fund.
Okay.
This fund has no effect on current expense, I'll say that. So at least it's not affecting that problem.
So, Jamie?
Yeah.
This is Mike. So with respect to LTAC and less funds available, I'm curious enough to remind myself on there's some dedicated allocation that comes out of LTAC, but I'm already thinking about parks allocation. If it isn't what it's historically been, that's going to put a further crimp on their budget.
Right.
For what it's worth, in my initial
we won't know for a while.
in my initial budget manipulations, just to see what would fit, all of the the repeat operating expenditures still fit within available funds, even if we drop to 50%. I believe that there is some sort of an agreement that those allocations would not be changed without a year's notice. Obviously, nobody expected such a dramatic change, but if we achieve 50%, all of those awards can still be honored for next year. Beyond that, I think that would require discussion.
So what I brought back to council from the LTAC meeting is, well, for 2020, everyone's locked in, so parks will get their money. What LTAC suggested is not having a grant round, not having an open grant round, but to do what Mylene's saying is hopefully we'll get to a place where, whatever you want to call them, the usual and accustomed operations, we hope to have enough to cover that. And that's where the committee is headed.
That sounds reasonable. And I'll keep in touch with you, Jamie, about any further discussion.
Great.
Doc Pres Fund, which is funded by recording fees, and its mission is to preserve archival and permanent retention documents. So far, we haven't seen any slowdown with recording fees. They may slow down if the building industry slows down. However, they also may increase because lower interest rates may encourage a lot of refinancing. So, nonetheless, I prepared a 5% reduction, which included, it was basically exclusively, I maintain a small budget in here for auditor staff wages, because if they begin to work on a project which involves finding lost documents, cleaning up documents, they can charge that to this fund. Although I have a proposal to reduce it in order to achieve a 5% reduction, it would be my recommendation that you not make that change, because although we don't always use that budget, if we do, it would actually take pressure off of current expense. So I offer this as a proposal. I say, let's not do it, because it's better for current expense if there's this possibility to spend some money in this fund. We're only talking about $2,000, by the way. This is not a lot of money. Couple small crime-related funds, crime victims and criminal justice. No change to either one of them. Criminal justice, I am going to be watching, because I'm not sure how or if it will be affected by the new $30 tab fees. This fund was created after the first Tim Eyman $30 tab fees, because it'll reduce criminal justice funding. So the Criminal Justice Commission or something like that was formed at the state, and they give money to the counties. We use this money in this county to purchase vehicles for the sheriff, and there's also a $105,000 transfer to current expense every year to help with criminal justice costs. So no change at this time, but I'll be watching it to see if revenue is affected. Septic and housing, both well-funded grant programs, no need to change. Bond redemption, the only change was to add the radio system debt. Public facilities, 2020 awards are made out of 2019 revenue, so there will be no effect to this year's funding round. However, 2021 awards can expect to be reduced. Capital improvement, there's 5 different departments in this, and other than decreasing interest earnings, incorporating any changes from other funds as far as their capital programs, I am looking at a small decrease in REIT 1 and REIT 2, just because the latest month suggests we may have a small drop. it could also just be a random variation. So I'll just keep my eye on that one. In any case, there's no change proposed for expenditures. And that's it. I was a little visitor to my office.
Mr. Stevens, do you have any questions for the auditor?
No.
Mr. Watson?
Just one, Mylene. So is the criminal justice sales tax transferred to current expense? Is it allocated specific to any particular use?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
No, we used to, there was a weird formula that was come up with many years ago, and it was distributed among different funds. But the truth is, it's a current expense revenue stream. It doesn't matter which department it goes to. So a few years ago, I changed it to where it goes into the sheriff's department, but it's irrelevant. It's current expense revenue.
All right, Mike, do you have any questions for the auditor?
No, I talk to the auditor probably almost every day.
At least.
Great. So thank you, Mylene. We have
You're welcome.
wrapped up the departmental budget revision exercise to look at a 5% reduction across all departments and the recently provided information regarding the funds from the auditor. The next item we have is a care spending continued, but I think we have addressed all that. Mr. Thomas, what is the status?
Well, I felt like you guys made the decision during the last conversation to divide up the care spending. So unless Mylene has a question, I don't have any.
So my understanding, we took.
Yes.
Hold on a second, Mylene. We took votes on the $157,000 for the small business assistance, and then we agreed to $292,000-ish in department head improvements, and so the remaining was going to cover the money coming out of the EOC cost associated with COVID. So I'm sorry, Mylene, what were you going to say?
I'm not sure how it was omitted, but the prosecutor had submitted a list of a few items that he wanted spending for. I don't remember everything on the list. There was probably some shielding and stuff like that. I remember there were body bags on the list. That was stuck in my head. But it was about $3,900, and I believe it was an omission that we did not ask you about that last time, and because it's a modest amount, I have tentatively included it in the care spending in the budget summary, but it would be great to have your formal approval of that. And Mike, do you happen to have that list handy? I can find it.
Yeah,
somewhere.
I'm trying to find it. I think it was like $3,850 or something, and it was for a variety of things, including some electronic equipment.
This is Randy. I can add.
Thank you, Andy.
Bulk of about 2/3 of the cost were for a special order of body bags, and I've confirmed through the state group that that's the full cost of preparation is allowable. That cost has been spent. Another portion of the estimate was that we expected to have some testing done of personnel in our office, and between now and October, and so we had some testing costs, and I believe the third part dealt with just PPE that we would not otherwise be able to have transferred from the EOC. There's some uncertainty about that.
So it was testing, body bags, PPE, a couple laptops, some printers, monitors, and some money for COVID leave for 2 employees. So a total of $3,822 even.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
All right, council, would you be willing to take a motion right now for approval of that, or would you like to see the information and have this on the agenda for next week for final approval? I'm okay with either one.
I would note that the COVID leave, the prosecutor has not assigned a cost to, and because that is budgeted with wages, there's no need to include it, but it's not included in the total we're looking at anyway.
Yeah.
Agreed.
What was that, Mylene?
The prosecutor mentioned some leave costs, but he has not assigned a dollar value to those, and we don't need to because those are already budgeted with wages.
Oh.
So in a nutshell, for some reason, so this was included, all of these costs were included in a memo to council on June 6th, and for some reason the prosecutor's 3822 didn't get on to the spreadsheet that was presented to council. So at some point I think you've seen the information.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
I entertain a motion for approval.
So before we do that, so is there CARES funding available to cover that cost?
I have already included this with the other departmental requests because I saw it as an accidental omission. So yes, it is included in the current budget.
Okay. I was just trying to be clear, you know.
Thank you, Bill.
Great. So then I move we add the PA expense to the previously approved departmental requests for CARES funding.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the $3,822 of PA requested, departmental request CARES funding. Is there any comments or questions? Without seeing all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much on that one. So council, I would like to add an executive session on performance of an employee as well. Would you like to do council member updates, then we can break into the closed and 2 executive sessions and then be adjourned? Or would you like to go to lunch now and then do the appointments and any updates and then go into executive and closed sessions?
I'd like to go to lunch now.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. So we will adjourn for lunch until 1:30, and enjoy your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.